I was like, we're the same. We love each other.
Yeah.
She was like, Jonathan, I'm Melanie Griffith. And I was like across.
Samuel Ian Heughan had left everything behind to return to Scotland, abandoning the polished corridors of Hollywood and the gleaming surfaces of luxury villas, and trading the glittering, relentless rhythm of Tinseltown for the ancient, weathered bones of the land that had shaped him since childhood. For he had reached a point where the applause no longer echoed inside him, where the lights no longer warmed him, where every red carpet felt like a corridor leading him further away from himself, rather than towards anything meaningful. And when he finally sat in that comfortable wooden chair inside the living room of the old Edinburgh mansion, looking out through the window at the mist clinging to the moss-coated roof tiles, the bare tree branches moving softly in the wind like fragile memories reaching out to him, he understood fully that his journey back was not simply geographical. It was spiritual, emotional, ancestral, a silent confession of longing spoken only to the wind and the cold Scottish air. The dim light reflected his figure in the glass, creating the illusion of two Sams, the one who had conquered the world, and the one he had abandoned somewhere on a grassy hillside beside Loch Lomond when he was still a boy listening to Gaelic lullabies carried by the breeze, both versions of himself merging in that faint reflection as he heard nothing but the whistling wind, the rustling leaves, and the pounding of his heart, a heart that beat louder now that he had made a choice most would call madness. He had walked away from everything people dream of, from contracts, from star-studded parties, from the intoxicating validation of fame, choosing instead the raw beauty of home, choosing the land that had lived within him even in the years he tried to forget it. His mind drifted to the memory of his childhood, a small cabin by Loch Lomond, the evening fire glowing as though it held the heartbeat of the Highlands, the red flames dancing on the dark water, his mother's voice weaving stories of Highland warriors and legends older than memory itself, tales of bravery, loyalty, sacrifice, and the kind of love that carves itself into the soul. Those stories, echoing through the cabin with the scent of burning peat and damp wool, had once shaped his imagination long before cameras and scripts ever entered his world, and now those same echoes called him back, inviting him to remember who he had been before he became Jamie Fraser to millions. But the road to that decision had not been smooth. In Los Angeles, with its constant honking cars, endless photo shoots, interviews, stunts, rehearsals, commitments, contracts piled upon contracts, Sam had begun to feel as though he were wrapped inside a thick, suffocating curtain, one woven from expectations, image, and performance. People saw the polished version. The actor with the perfect smile, the magazine covers, the red carpets, the sculpted body drenched in cinematic blood or Highland rain. They saw the glow. They saw the myth. But they never saw the cold that seeped in when the set shut down at night, the loneliness that crept in when the lights went out, the ache in his chest after the cheering stopped, nor the fatigue in his bones after playing a character who demanded everything, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and left little space for Sam, the man behind the legend. Fame, with all its glittering rewards, was also a cage gilded with gold dust. He had crossed a threshold many dreamed of, becoming the face of one of the most beloved series in modern television, living and breathing the monumental character of Jamie Fraser. Yet each time he wielded a sword, each time he rode across the Scottish countryside on set, each time he bared his soul in love or in war for a scene, felt a piece of himself fragment. One part real, one part performance, one part something he could no longer tell apart. And then came the everything, after filming the scene where Jamie reaches out his exhausted hand during a flood. A scene that drained him in a way even he could not fully articulate. Sam returned to his villa, stood at the window, staring into the cold glare of the white streetlights, and suddenly tears streamed down his face. Not because the scene had been emotionally taxing or physically punishing, though it was both, but because, in that stillness, he realized with a crushing clarity that he had forgotten something essential. He had forgotten himself, the boy who once sat by the fire listening to Gaelic songs, the young man who hiked the Highlands at dawn, the son who missed the warmth of shared meals, the friend who missed the easy laughter of people who knew him long before the world claimed him. He had forgotten the smell of wet grass under the first morning dew, the taste of cold rain on the wind, the rough texture of mossy stones beneath his hands, the untranslatable feeling of belonging he only ever felt in Scotland. That realization brewed inside him like a storm. The decision, once only a whisper, became a clear voice inside his chest. The next morning, he called his agent. "I need to talk about leaving Los Angeles," he said, his voice steady yet heavy with unspoken truth. His agent, utterly stunned, repeated, "You want to quit?" Sam didn't answer at once. He simply listened, not to the agent's shock, nor to the distant noise outside the window, but to the quiet pounding of his own heart. To the ghost of the Scottish wind he felt as though it were brushing his cheek even from thousands of miles away. "I need to go home," he finally said. "I need to get back something I lost." What followed were weeks of conversations, negotiations, sleepless nights where he questioned himself, feared the unknown, but also felt more alive than he had in years. Slowly, the plan took shape. Sell the villa in the California hills. Let go of the glass walls, the polished floors, the perfect. Find a small house in the highlands near the lake, near the mountains, where the mist rolled through the valleys like a living spirit, where life was rougher but richer, quieter but truer. When the plane finally landed at Edinburgh Airport, Sam stepped out into the cool air and felt it fill his lungs like an ancient memory returning. The air smelled of earth, of damp grass, of history older than empires, and somewhere in the distance he imagined he could hear the faint echo of Gaelic chants drifting across the hilltops. As he walked across the tarmac, a small cloud of mist swirled around him, chilling his fingers but warming something deep in his chest. A warmth without words, a warmth born of belonging. The drive through Edinburgh and then into the Highlands was like traveling backwards through time. The cobblestone roads, the rolling fields, the bowing birches, the majestic peaks cutting the sky with ancient dignity. He realized how much he had forgotten. The feel of dewy grass beneath his boots, the sight of a star-strewn sky untouched by city lights, the raw bite of a cold wind turning the tips of his ears red, the sudden downpour of rain in torrents that felt like blessings rather than inconveniences. At night, in the small cabin that resembled the one he grew up in, Sam sat by the fire under a down blanket, a hot cup of tea warming his hands, listening to the rain tapping gently on the roof. For the first time in years, he heard his own voice, not the one shaped by scripts, not the one demanded by interviews, but the quiet voice within him, steady and real. And though living in Scotland did not mean giving up Outlander, for Jamie Fraser lived in him as deeply as Scotland did, Sam felt something shift, something align. Returning home had made Jamie clearer, more human, more alive within him. Walking along the rocky paths where he once imagined Fraser's Ridge standing proudly, where Jamie and Claire built. Their home in fiction yet echoed something deeply true in spirit. Sam touched the mossy stones, listened to the gentle lap of waves on the shore, imagined the shouts of battle, the crack of muskets, the whispers of love, the echoes of fictional ghosts that nonetheless felt rooted in the land itself. Scotland was not merely a place. For Sam, it was the beginning, the middle, and the still unwritten end. And in returning to it, he reclaimed not just his past, but his future.
Okay, oh my God. So, will you marry me? Wait.
Oh my God, you guys, this is happening.
The days passed beneath the gray Scottish sky with a rhythm that felt older than memory itself. A rhythm stitched together by the distant clatter of carts pulled by oxmen, the murmured conversations of Indians, Scots, and wanderers crossing the same worn paths, the clopping of horses, and the gentle ancient scrape of wheels rolling along dirt roads softened by mist. Sam walked through it all with a strange mixture of quiet purpose and restless anticipation. For every sound became part of the world he was trying to resurrect, Jamie's world, and every sight reminded him that Scotland was not simply a backdrop but a living, breathing presence with a pulse older than any script. On misty mornings he stood on lonely hillsides where threads of fog curled like pale fingers around the rocks, and he practiced Gaelic slowly, imperfectly, yet with a devotion that came from something deeper than performance. He let the round, musical sounds settle on his tongue as he repeated them after old men with weathered faces and soft laughter. They would ask him why a Hollywood actor wanted to learn a dying tongue, and he would smile, trying to explain that Jamie was no longer just a character on the screen but a memory carved into the bones of Scotland herself. A living spirit tied to the wind, the rain, the griefs, and the triumphs of a nation that had carried its history like a heartbeat. Jamie, for Sam, had become the bridge between the Scotland of legends and the Scotland that existed now. Scarred in places, proud in others, rugged, unapologetic, endlessly beautiful. And Sam desperately wanted Jamie to speak his mother tongue not as an actor reciting lines, but as a son coming home. He studied the final scripts of Outlander again and again, the pages softening between his fingers, because he knew this finale was not simply the end of a television series. It was the culmination of a decade of love and war, sacrifice and forgiveness, historical pain clashing with modern sensibilities, and him more intimately than most people realized. He messaged the producers late at night, texted the directors, held long conversations about lighting and wind patterns and the quality of dawn on specific Scottish hillsides. He fought for certain scenes to be shot not in polished studios in America, where bright colors and over-edited sound threatened to sanitize the rawness he cherished, but among the real landscapes where footsteps crackled on dry leaves, where gunshots echoed realistically through uneven valleys, where fire hissed in the moist night air, and where the earth itself felt alive beneath one's boots. He wanted audiences to smell the smoke, feel the damp cold, sense the terror and the tenderness intertwined. He knew authenticity was not about perfection. It was about truth. Some nights he found himself lying awake, drenched in a sweat that had nothing to do with the temperature, haunted by the internal division that tormented Jamie in the final chapters. The brutal pull between two worlds, between Claire's love and the relentless demands of history, between loyalty and destiny, between survival and surrender. The script required Jamie to make a choice that would tear something vital from him, and Sam rehearsed that choice so profoundly in his mind that he could almost hear the screams, almost taste the smoke on his tongue, almost feel the sting of letting go. Yet amidst the sorrow of those imagined moments, there was also a strange, fragile joy whenever he imagined the final reunion. The meeting, the desperate embrace, the whispered lines that had long become sacred to fans. "I will find you, you are my home." Words that were no longer merely romantic but had grown into a soft declaration from Jamie to Scotland, to Claire, to the audience, to anyone who had ever felt torn between love and duty. When childhood friends visited him in Scotland, they brought with them the warmth of past lives. They sat together in old-fashioned rooms with wooden tables scratched. Time, sipping whiskey slowly, eating small cakes dipped in thick cream, and listening to Sam recount stories from Hollywood. Stories of chaotic film sets, endless retakes, rain-soaked kisses under studio lights, muddy battlefields crafted by production teams, arguments between directors, and nights when exhaustion pushed actors to the brink. His friends laughed, shook their heads, and occasionally grew quiet, especially when Sam's stories drifted towards Jamie's most painful scenes. One evening a childhood friend looked at him with an oddly soft expression and asked, "Do you remember when we used to run through the tall grass behind your grandmother's cottage? When you wore that hand-knitted jumper she made for you? The one too big for your shoulders?" And Sam, with a distant smile, nodded as the memories washed over him. Memories of wool that smelled faintly of lanolin, of wooden floors warmed by coal fires, of raindrops tapping against windowsill pans, of chickens clucking in the yard, of nursery rhymes sung in small voices. Those simple recollections were his foundation, the place his soul returned to when fame became too loud. In those quiet moments he realized something essential. Jamie's strength was not only that of a warrior or a lover but of a son of Scotland, someone who carried rivers and mountains in his heart, who represented the unspoken ache of a homeland that had seen too much loss and yet still sang its sorrow into beauty. Jamie's courage, tenderness, fury, and devotion were all reflections of the Scotland Sam remembered as a boy. Returning to Scotland did not mean taking a break. Sam trained daily with stubborn determination, sword work bruising his hands, riding lessons for steep hill scenes leaving him breathless, Gaelic lessons pushing him to master accents and cadences required for the most emotional farewells. He visited an old tailor known for crafting authentic period garments, insisting that Jamie's final shirts should look lived in, torn in the, stained by dust and hardship, not polished costumes, but pieces that held stories in their fibers. When the crew eventually arrived, Sam took a strange leadership role, guiding directors, makeup artists, cinematographers, and set builders through valleys that held centuries of grief and glory. He introduced them to the local carpenter who had rebuilt wooden doors by hand using traditional tools, to a shepherd who knew how wool should smell when rain touched it, to small village shopkeepers who greeted everyone with warmth and gossip. He wanted the final scenes to breathe real life, not just cinematic illusion, to carry the scent of fires burning in kitchen hearths, the hum of insects, the uneven rhythm of Scottish rain tapping against blades of grass. On one fog-thick afternoon in Uist, Sam stood before the camera dressed as Jamie, his costume soaked with mist, his sword heavy in his hand, the wind pushing against him like a testing force. The light was dim, soft, ancient. He inhaled deeply, hearing Claire's line echo in his mind. Home is where the heart is. And in that moment he understood with a clarity that surprised him that Scotland was not merely Jamie's home. It was the beginning and the ending of everything. Not only because of the scenery, though the landscape was heartbreakingly beautiful, but because of the quiet history, the nostalgia stitched into every stone, the unspoken love woven into every Highland breeze. The days unfolded beneath the familiar gray Scottish sky with a rhythm that felt older than any written history. A rhythm stitched into the daily movement of oxmen pulling heavy carts along dirt roads, horses passing with steady clops, and the mingled voices of Indians, Scots, and travelers who shared the same winding paths. Sam moved through this landscape with a quiet determination, absorbing every detail, for he knew he was not merely returning home. He was returning to the roots of a character who had transformed his life. On mist-soaked mornings, he stood on lonely hillsides where fog drifted like ancient spirits and patiently practiced Gaelic with elderly locals. Their accents thick, their smiles warm, their stories long. They teased him at times, amused by an actor from Hollywood struggling to pronounce certain sounds. But they admired his dedication once they realized he wasn't learning the language for glamour or publicity, but because Jamie, the character he had carried for years, was becoming a living memory inside him, someone whose mother tongue could not be faked. Jamie, in Sam's mind, had grown into a symbolic bridge between Scotland's turbulent past and the global audience that now cherished these stories, and Sam felt an almost sacred responsibility to let Jamie speak the language of his ancestors with truth, not performance. It wasn't just about accuracy. It was about honoring a land that shaped him long before he knew what acting meant. In the quiet of evenings, Sam pored over the finale script, fingertips brushing over phrases that felt heavier than ink. Lines about sacrifice, love, war, forgiveness. He understood that the ending of Outlander would not be simply the closing of a series, but the culmination of every heartbeat, every wound, every whispered promise the characters had carried for years. He argued passionately with producers and directors, sending late-night messages about where the final scenes should be shot, insisting on authentic light, authentic wind, authentic earth beneath their feet. He pushed back against the idea of filming in American studios where modern techniques polished everything too brightly. Sam wanted rawness, the crunch of dry leaves, the chilling echo of distant gunfire, the hissing of flames fighting the damp Highland air. Cinematic perfection meant nothing to him if it meant losing the heartbeat of Scotland's soil. Some nights he woke from nightmares where Jamie stood alone between two worlds, torn between Claire and the crushing demands of history, torn between loyalty and love. The choice Jamie had to make in the final script haunted Sam deeply, not because it was dramatic, but because it required Jamie to break himself open in a way only someone who had loved too fiercely could understand. Yet even in those heavy moments of imagining smoke, screams, and loss, Sam felt a flicker of joy whenever he imagined the final reunion. The embrace, the lines whispered like a vow. "I will find you. You are my home." Words grounding Jamie not only in Claire's love, but in Scotland's soul. When childhood friends visited him, they brought a warmth that softened the weight of his work. They sat at small wooden tables drinking whiskey slowly, nibbling cakes dipped in cream, falling into laughter as Sam recounted Hollywood chaos. Rain-soaked retakes, sword fights that left bruises, and romantic scenes performed in freezing weather. But when he shared the darker, heavier scenes, those filled with blood, screams, and heartbreak, the room often fell quiet, his friends watching him with a mixture of pride and worry. One evening one of them asked softly, Do you remember when we used to run through the tall grass behind your grandmother's cottage? When you wore that oversized jumper she knitted for you? The memory hit Sam with surprising tenderness. The smell of wool softened by years of washing. The warmth of a coal fire crackling in. Next room. Raindrops tapping rhythmically at the windowsill. Chickens fussing in the yard. Nursery rhymes sung without fear or exhaustion. Those memories reminded him who he truly was beneath the fame and long filming hours. A Scottish boy shaped by simple things, things Jamie would have known too. And in that remembrance he realized that Jamie's strength did not come solely from battlefield bravery or passionate devotion to Claire. It came from being a son of Scotland, carrying the rain, the mountains, the silence, and the grief of the land inside him. Sam continued working tirelessly, training with weapons until his palms burned, riding horses over steep hills until his body ached, perfecting Gaelic lines until his voice cracked. He sought out craftsmen who understood authenticity, including a tailor who stitched Jamie's final shirts by hand, ensuring they looked worn, dusted, and shaped by hardship. When the crew arrived, Sam guided them across valleys, introducing them to local carpenters, shepherds, shopkeepers, people who lived the Scotland he wanted to capture. He insisted that every element of the final scenes should breathe genuine life. The smell of kitchen smoke, the dampness of morning fog, the hum of midges near the river. And then came the foggy